Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. Today is the third anniversary of the release of the final report of the inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. The federal government held a press conference to mark the occasion, but as APTN's Fraser Needham reports, they got an earful.
You can feel the frustration from people like Ling Gru of the Native Women's Association of Canada.
What do you mean? We're 3 years into waiting for some actions to be taken, and instead of reporting on the actions you're taking, you're reporting on what people saying still needs to be done. Well, we don't need to know that.
Or Hilda Anderson-Piers of the National Family and Survivors Circle.
I cannot state this enough. Without the political will to create transformative change, this genocide will continue. The government must be accountable for its responsibility to the 231 calls for justice. They are legal imperatives and they are not optional.
And 2SL LGBTQIA+ spokesperson Sylvia Miracle says government and other organizations have a long way to go in making MMIWG initiatives totally inclusive.
And we're also looking to be involved in discussions about policy changes, about organizational change as well, to not just sort of tack us on at the end. And right now, you can find the acronym everywhere, but you can't find proof that there's real inclusion.
Organizations say Ottawa has made some progress on the calls to justice in the final report, but after 3 years it has been both too slow and too little. And they're wondering why the Liberals have still failed to appoint an independent ombudsperson to monitor progress.
Fraser, there's no excuse for it. We really should have done it yesterday. We are working on it, and I hope to see progress with him in my department sooner.
And Justice Minister David Lametti added,
been working with national Indigenous leadership, in particular ITK, but also AFN and MNC, to create that kind of body. So stripping away layers of colonialism takes time.
But Gru says doing your best and saying you're sorry just isn't good enough anymore.
There was still that glimmer of hope that today they were going to come out with something, really strong. And that did not happen. They came out with mea culpa. It's my fault. There's no explanation. It's a big problem. It's systemic. No, this is not okay.
Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Supporters of the Manitoba Kuwait-Nawi Okimakanak gathered at the MMIWG monument in Winnipeg. Tobacco and roses were placed at the monument to honor the murdered and missing. Heidi Spence speaks for the Northern Chiefs organization.
It's important because those are stories from other family members, and their experiences with MMIWG. So it's important that we don't forget those stories and continue honoring, the lives of those who have been impacted.
For more now on the third anniversary of the release of the National Inquiry's final report, we're joined by the Chief Commissioner of the inquiry, Marion Buller. Commissioner Buller, thanks so much for being with us.
Happy to be here.
How do you reflect back on the National Inquiry on this third anniversary of the release of the final report?
Well, first of all, in some respects, it seems like yesterday. And in other respects, it seems almost like a lifetime ago. Mm-hmm. But what I can say is I really thought more would have been accomplished by now in 3 years.
As I'm sure you're aware, 3 Indigenous women have been murdered in Winnipeg in the last 3 weeks. In BC, the advocates in the family of Chelsea Poorman are calling for justice after police deemed her death was not suspicious. These are just a couple of examples of the ongoing crisis. What does it say to you that this continues?
Well, the continuing news of deaths and women going missing just shows how things haven't changed, how the genocide is continuing in Canada, and how governments, especially the federal government, seem to think that's acceptable.
The federal government is out today touting its action on MMIWG, but the Native Women's Association did a report card and found there was very little progress. How do you rate the federal government's record?
Oh, well, first of all, it's difficult for an ordinary citizen to find out what the federal government has actually accomplished in terms of implementation of our calls for justice. I don't have access to any insider information. I'm like anybody else. I have to go on the internet to find out what's been happening. I watch the news on APTN to find out what's happening. And it's just really difficult to find out, what money has been promised, what money has actually been spent, and what, if any, are the benefits of that expenditure. So I'm a bit in the dark, to be honest with you, because there just isn't an easy way to get that information.
Commissioner, what would you like to see happen?
Well, what I'd like to see is some evidence of a shift in the way of thinking. The federal government has announced the expenditure of billions of dollars over a period of time. We don't know how much of that, or we don't know easily how much of that money has been spent. And we don't know easily whether that's been productive or not. So having said that, I wish I could start to see a shift in thinking away from filling symptoms, how to describe it, instead of seeing problems, Indigenous issues, as being gaps in services that need band-aids in the way of money. Shift that way of thinking to looking at systemic failures and fixing the systemic failures. We know that the child welfare system is broken. We know that the criminal justice system and corrections is broken. We know that there are so many problems with education and housing on reserve land, for example. We know in the North, Inuit have a whole other list of priorities. So, what I'd like to see is let's get away from the very expensive Band-Aid measures that really don't solve the problem. And let's start looking at systems and changing the systems that are causing the problems.
Good things there. Commissioner, we'll have to leave it there, but a pleasure as always to speak with you.
My pleasure as well. Thank you so much.
To Saskatchewan now, where the second of 4 people charged in connection with the death of a Métis woman made a court appearance in Saskatoon today. But as APTN's Leanne Sanders reports, many questions remain about what happened to Megan Gallagher.
44-year-old Roderick William Sutherland made his first appearance on a charge of offering an indignity to human remains in the death of Megan Gallagher. Another man, 41-year-old Ernest Vernon Whitehead, appeared on the same charge yesterday. Police are still looking for 2 other people, but are not saying what happened to Megan. The mood was somber for the 30-year-old woman's family, who have become prominent voices in the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls movement in Saskatchewan since she went missing in September 2020. Megan's father, Brian, says like the past 18 months, the last few days have been incredibly difficult.
You don't, like I've said so many times, if you're not sleeping the same, you're not doing anything the same, your routine is messed up. And just physically kind of drains everything out of your whole soul, your whole body. You just have to wait and be patient.
Gallagher's sister, Lindsay Bishop, is in Thunder Bay on a cross-Canada walk to raise awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous women. Stepmother, Debbie Gallagher, says her daughter is committed to this cause in spite of the fresh grief of the past few days.
It's important to be proud of who you are, but when those truths have been denied to you, you already feel bad. And you talk about the oppression for women, it just becomes a layer, and then throw a two-spirited person or a gay person on top of there, there's yet another layer.
Gallagher went missing in September 2020. She was last seen alive on a convenience store surveillance tape In 2021, police said they were considering Gallagher's case a homicide. Her aunt says they still don't know what happened to Megan.
We honestly don't know. And like I said, until things are final, I will hope and pray every night that she walks through the door. But we want her home. One way or another, we want her home. We need her home.
The family is urging anyone who knows 44-year-old John Wayne Sanderson of James Smith First Nation and 42-year-old Jessica Sutherland to come forward with any information they may have on their whereabouts. Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Thanks, Leanne. Time for a quick break. Coming up, the fallout for a realtor who tore down posters of Chelsea Poorman. Stick around. Welcome back. An update now on a story about a family seeking answers about the death of their loved one in Vancouver. They'd been putting up posters appealing for information, but people were caught on tape removing those posters. APTN's Tina House has more on the fallout from those actions.
For friends and family of Chelsea Poorman, they have many questions about what happened to her. On September the 6th, 2020, she went out on the town with her sister Paige, but they got separated that night. Family reported her missing on September the 8th, 2020, and on May the 6th, 2022, Vancouver police revealed they found her skeletal remains behind this mansion in one of Vancouver's most affluent areas. The police ruled it not suspicious, but her family says it would have been impossible for her to climb the gate by herself because she has a disability. And they say that it is suspicious. Palahelsia Lorelei Williams has had to do this dozens of times over the years, putting up posters to help families look for their missing or murdered loved ones and trying to find answers. It's not easy, and a grim reminder that violence against Indigenous women and girls is continuing, despite a national inquiry and pressure for the government and justice system to do better.
This Mod Podge is to make sure the posters don't come off. We've used wheat paste as well because racist people are taking her posters down. We found another way to put them up.
It's not vandalism. And this person seen taking down Chelsea's posters has now been identified as Vancouver realtor Randy Vogel,
Why are you offended?
who worked with McDonald Realty. Vogel also owns this Airbnb on Granville Street, where he was filmed taking down the posters. Since the video has gone viral, McDonald Realty has fired Randy Vogel and issued this statement. As an organization, we are in full support of Chelsea Poorman's family and friends as they search for answers and justice. We do not condone any inappropriate actions taken by any member of our community, and Randy Vogel is no longer with McDonald Realty. APTN went to his residence to ask him why he took down the posters, but there was no answer. His website and all social media has also been taken down. Chelsea's mom Sheila says she is saddened that he lost his job, but says after talking with the president of McDonald Realty, she understands it was their decision to let him go.
The main thing that I wanted was a public apology from Randy, and an explanation as to why would he do that.
I wish you the best of day. This video was also captured of another woman who lives in Shaughnessy ripping down the posters, saying it ruined the look of the light pole.
A human life is more important than a pole being ruined by a little bit of glue or tape at the end of the day. Yeah. So that's just a ridiculous statement for her to make.
The family of Chelsea Poorman say they don't want any more attention being given to what they say are ignorant people taking down the posters, but rather the attention should continue to be on what really happened to 24-year-old Chelsea Poorman, and how did she end up in the back of this mansion and supposedly dying here, with police continuing to say her death is not suspicious.
Just regarding our pleas and our statements, and letting them know that we were trying our best to let them know that Chelsea was vulnerable. And for them not to, you know, take that serious, like that was hurtful. To the person who was with Chelsea, I just asked them to come forward.
Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
To the north now, and the Nunavut Legislative Assembly is back in session. And by Nunavut's political standards, this has been a tumultuous week in Iqaluit. 2 former cabinet members gunning for the Premier, an MLA suspended, and a new flag going up at the Assembly. Our Ken Driscoll joins us from the Legislative Assembly in Iqaluit.
Thanks. And yeah, just over my shoulder. Have a look. This week, for the first time ever, the Nunavut Legislative Assembly is flying the Pride flag. The Premier and many members of the Assembly praised the move from the Assembly chamber. But Iqaluit MLA Janet Brewster really drove the point home.
And as a member of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, I'm taking off my mask to say that today and every day, it is important that we are being more visible for the people who don't have the courage to do so.
And now, from members showing pride to members behaving poorly. The Assembly voted to suspend one of their members for one day of the Assembly for what they called public intoxication. Jolie Karnik, the member for Aglulik and Senarayak, was suspended. The motion isn't specific, but eyewitnesses tell us that last week on Friday, Karnik was intoxicated while asking questions at the Assembly. He apologized and promised to get help for his addiction problems. And now, for a political dogfight that has been haunting this government since the new Premier and Cabinet began to debate back in March. Adam Lightstone was elected to Cabinet in November 2021 and got the job of Human Resources Minister. In December, Lightstone's spouse was named Acting Deputy Minister of Human Resources. In March, the Integrity Commissioner got involved. Lightstone resigned from Cabinet for appearance of conflict of interest. The Premier has said he only learned about the conflict of interest on December 21st. George Hicks and Joe Savikata are the ones who have been asking questions about this timeline for months. They don't buy the Premier's answer. Here, Savikata explains why he's still asking.
And Mr. Speaker, the Speaker is correct. When a person doesn't receive answers, it makes you want the answers more. People deserve to get answers, even if it's not the one you want to hear, but an answer, as long as it's a truthful answer.
Last Assembly, Hicks and Savikata were in Cabinet. Now they are. When Lightstone resigned, Savikata ran for his seat in Cabinet and lost. Now the two are peppering the Premier over conflict of interest questions. Just because they call it consensus government doesn't mean everyone gets along. Back to you in Winnipeg.
Thanks, Kent. A new episode of APTN Investigates is coming up right after the news. We'll speak with reporter Rob Smith about his documentary after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And Davy Patricia Caliu sent in this picture of 2 romantic swans that she saw on her way home in Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation. Submit your pictures to share at aptn.ca along with a location and description. Be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at Saturday's weather forecast. Starting out on the East Coast, 20 for Halifax, 15 in Charlottetown. Sunny and 18 in Kuujjuaq, showers and 6 for Nain. 22 in Montreal, rain and 14 for Val-d'Or. 18 in Sault Ste. Marie, showers and 17 for North Bay. 18 in Thunder Bay, 16 for Sioux Lookout. 8 with rain in God's Lake and Norway House. Sunny skies and 19 for Winnipeg, Brandon and Dauphin. 23 under the sun for Regina, Saskatoon and North Battleford. 22 and sunny in Meadow Lake and Uranium City. Over in northern Alberta, 25 and sunny for Fort McMurray, showers and 20 in Grand Prairie. Rain 20 in Edmonton, 23 with showers for Lethbridge. 18 and rain in Vancouver, 21 in Kamloops. 21 with showers for Prince George, 15 and rain in Dease Lake. Sunny and 11 for Old Crow, 22 in Whitehorse. 23 in Yellowknife, cloudy and 12 in Wrigley. 0 with snow in Sax Harbor, +2 with snow for Paulatuck. +2 for Chesterfield, 6 for Whale Cove and Baker Lake, -3 in Resolute, 0 in Igloo Lake. We are already suffering the effects of climate change. That's the belief of the members of the Climate Disaster Project. The group set out to create an oral history of climate disaster survivors. APTN Investigates' Rob Smith joined the team, and he's here now to talk about the documentary he produced. Rob, good to see you. Can you tell us a bit about what the Climate Disaster Project is?
For sure. It's a group of academics, professors, journalism students who have banded together across the country in different institutions to go out and capture oral history, oral stories of people who have suffered through climate change disasters. They presuppose, this project presupposes that we are already in it. It's not something to worry about in the future. People are suffering from traumatic situations as we speak.
Who are some of those storytellers?
Well, here in BC, the project identified that the poor and vulnerable populations will be the first and the worst hit by climate change. So they partnered with Megaphone magazine. It's a street newspaper here that is by and for residents of the downtown east side. So they're storytellers, they're writers, they write articles, poems, they're photographers. For this mag, we're the people that we talk to get their stories about how they survived some of the climate disasters that happened here in BC over the past couple of years.
Rob, what were some of the things you were hearing from them?
Some very harrowing stories of survival, some traumatic loss of hometowns and evacuations, loss of a friend due to a heat wave. And what you're finding out is that there's this kind of, in the neighborhood, a kind of, what the hell, just, another thing to worry about, trauma being slapped down on trauma. But the other thing, too, is there's a real angry plea coming from them for the rest of us to do something about this. So there's some very powerful stuff, and I hope you tune in.
Already been a wild spring all over the place. Rob, looking forward to a timely piece. Appreciate you taking some time for us.
Thank you.
You can watch Rob's doc on APTN Investigates in a little less than 2 minutes' time here. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Friday. For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca, and never miss a story by downloading the APTN News app. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for joining us. Stick around for Investigates. Have a great night.